Right, we are up and ready for today's Kickstarter. The conversation had already begun behind the scenes, but it's Tanzania's electoral politics under the test once again. I'll be introducing my guests very shortly, including one who is on ground to bring us the pulse of the polls as the elections roll out this morning. But Tanzanians are going to the polls today in a widely watched general election in which President Samia Suluhu Hassan is seeking to cement her status as the country's most powerful individual. Thrust in the middle of the altar of political power by the sudden death of her boss in 2021, that's the President Pombe Magufuli, Hassan faced resistance from the establishment from the word go, and she has often used extreme tactics in the administration of government in order to keep the former Magufuli allies at bay, but also build confidence in her abilities in a deeply patriarchal society. But in a region and a continent awash with strongmen with an unquenchable appetite for power and the fear for the opposition, has the Tanzanian president taken notes on regime survival as Africa's strong woman poster girl, or is she just the accidental Iron Lady? Those are questions that we shall be seeking answers to. I'm joined by Mande Akol Amazima, a Pan-Africanist who has conducted extensive scholarly incursions into the workings of Africa's foremost political parties, including CCM or Chama cha Mapinduzi in Tanzania, as well as the African National Congress. We also have on ground Council retired Major Paula Awich. He is the Director External Affairs at the NRM Secretariat, and is also part of the team of observers from Uganda that is led by former Vice President Dr. Specioza Wandira Kazibe. Welcome to Morning at NTV, retired Major. I see you're ready for the job today, observing the election as Tanzanians go to the polls. We shall be talking to you first, but just a reminder that we also expect to hear from Honorable Jacqueline Amongin, who is one of Uganda's representatives at the IALA, that is in Arusha. She will be joining us later on Zoom, as well as Honorable Fred Mukasambide, Deputy President of the Democratic Party here in Uganda, and he's also lived in Arusha as a member of the East African Legislative Assembly and may have some first-hand experiences and tales about the political gambadoism in Tanzania. So we can look forward to that. But let's go to Major Paula Awich first, who is an observer, to bring us up to speed with what is happening today, right now. Good morning, Major.
Yes, good morning, and good morning, viewers in Uganda and around the world.
Bring us up to speed with your status there, but also how you see the rollout of the polls this morning.
Good morning, viewers and listeners. I'm in a city called Mwanza. Mwanza is just at the source of Lake Victoria. I was yesterday teasing my friends that if I decide to walk like Jesus on the water, I would get myself in Entebbe through the water directly. So I'm in Mwanza, but I'm going out now. And that's why I'm saying, you don't hear me?
I can hear you, Major. Please speak.
Yes, I'm saying I'm at the source of Lake Victoria in Mwanza, and I was teasing somebody yesterday that I could walk from Mwanza on water like Jesus up to Entebbe. Now, as you all know, for the clarity is that I am not an observer mission member. I am invited here as a comrade to CCM, to be with them, to witness what they're doing, to see their transparency, so that in future we can be witness. Because it is becoming international best practice that as a progressive party, you call your colleagues to say, hey, colleagues, see what we are doing. Are we doing it right? Are we transparent enough? So I'm here in a group of about six other parties from South Africa, ANC, Burundi, Mozambique, Zimbabwe, Angola. We are six parties in all as comrades to watch what our comrades are doing, particularly in their transparency. Now, yesterday we attended the last rally by the president of CCM, It was fine, it was peaceful, it was well attended in the stadium. I've also been here for now a week. I've been moving around the country. There's no single violence, nothing. And therefore, it is contrary to the state of the nation that some people portray, that there's a riot, there's emotion, there's a fear, there's nothing. I've not seen, and I've moved for now 7 days. As I said earlier, for us, we do this because Uganda has been united to Tanzania for a long time by CCM, from the days of Museveni and Obote. I mean, from the days of Nyerere and Obote. And it came through up to 79 that the CCM which helped liberate Uganda. So our bondage with CCM is so high. And we therefore get it pleasing that on their own motion, without us requesting, they are the ones who come and said, please come move around the country, see what we are doing, see if we are being transparent, see if we are being democratic, and in that way we'll be proceeding like a peer rating. You know, when your peers, your friends are the ones telling you, it's not like an opponent telling you or an enemy, because you would have freely subjected yourself to appraisal by your own friends and said, please tell me you are my friend. And peer rating system works in international, even among states. So this is why I'm here, and my finding is that there's peace here in the electoral process of Tanzania.
All right, thank you very much. Allow me ask you a question. You've talked about the fact that you've been in the country for the last 7 days and have moved around and haven't witnessed any form of violence as being reported across the various media houses. But let me put this question to you. The leading opposition party, Chadema, is not participating in this election on account of having been barred by the Independent National Electoral Commission of Tanzania. The party that is second in terms of popularity, the ACT Wazalendo, is also not participating in this election. We, however, have at least 14 other political parties who do not make up even 5% of the political dispensation in Tanzania participating freely. It speaks to one thing, that the formidable parties have been tactically removed from the equation. The opposition leader, Tundu Lissu, has been in jail. Does that something that bodes well with you?
Oh, first of all, the facts, the detail of the facts, I don't have it because it borders legality. It needed somebody who had appraised itself with the legal process or the facts raising issues, because these matters went to court. But about these other parties, remember I've told you I've moved all over the country. I've even been to Zanzibar. The common thing I hear from defectors from those parties is that their only ground was that they wanted electoral reform. And it is the defectors from those parties who are coming to say that call for electoral reform was a decoy, that for them they knew that they couldn't win, and that is why they were raising that. They effectively raise it in the forums that have been in Zanzibar, in the mainland. Why or how that ground was a shallow ground and it could not hold. Therefore, the fact that they were not there is that according to the defectors, that it couldn't hold. Okay. Colleagues, I'm being told to go down and fly away from here.
All right.
I'm sorry, I missed this debate.
Thank you very much, Major Paula Awich, the Director External Affairs at the National Resistance Movement Secretariat. He has told us that he is in Tanzania on the invitation of the Chama Mapinduzi, or CCM, inviting parties from across Africa to be able to witness and basically be peer observers on what is happening there. Of course, you do know that President Yoweri Museveni has a good history of Tanzania's political workings, having been at the University of Dar es Salaam, where it's widely documented that he launched his political ambitions. Allow me to return to the studio and engage with Mande Akol Chamazima, a Pan-Africanist, but also also a scholar who, as I said earlier, has immersed himself in some of the workings of political parties, including the Chama cha Mapinduzi, as well as the Africa National Congress. Welcome to Morning at NTV, Mr. Cole Amazima.
The pleasure is mine.
Great. You've had Major Paula which speak within the context of a peer, member of the Revolutionary Party, and he's in Tanzania to either learn or be a party to what is rolling out, maybe one thing or two that needs to be changed or needs to provide good feedback in the conduct of political parties in other parts of Africa can help him and indeed the national resistance movement. What do you make of his submission first? He spoke about the fact that there isn't violence, and there appears to have been reports of a clampdown on the opposition ahead of this poll. What is your reading of the landscape?
Well, of course, yes, as he says, there isn't violence, and this is mainly because the two main opposition parties are really not participating in this election. That is number one. But also the other reason is that normally in Tanzania, CCM is a larger than life party. It is a mass party, just like you see NRM, just like you see the Communist Party in China. Yeah, that when you see mass parties, they are always everywhere, unless they are facing serious challenge, like in 2015, the Lowassa wave. Perhaps that's when you can expect some kind of violence. Then also you realize that Mama Suluhu Hassan, ever since she came into power, she has actually worked around the clock to consolidate power. You see, we've had incidences where the president passes on and the vice president fails to consolidate power. This happened in Malawi when Bingwa Mutharika died and Joyce Banda came in. Joyce Banda really failed to consolidate power. But you see, for her, she has really worked around the clock to ensure that she does not stop at anything in as far as consolidating her power is concerned.
When you talk about her ability to consolidate power and stopping at nothing, what exactly do you mean? Okay,
because you see, when Dr. John Pombe Magufuli died, the Tanzanian constitution, the framers of the Tanzanian constitution had never envisaged that the vice president would be a woman. That's why even in their constitution, the clause was saying he, and that gave them headache. But we have a vice president, but the constitution says he. So it took the guidance of former president like Al-Hassan Mwinyi and Dr. Kikwete to say, look here, that was an anomaly. Even the Bible, God says, I created man, but meaning male. So it took that kind of interpretation for her to be allowed. And now we realized that the former speaker, who was a very good ally with John Pombe Magufuli, Jacob Ndugai, were part of the people who really wanted to block her. And indeed, you find that after 1 year in office, people like Jacob Ndugai and others were purged out. So that was one way of consolidating power. Yeah.
You look at it as a way of consolidating power, but some would say that was the birth of a new version of African dictator, one who had been thrust into the nucleus of the altar of power when they were not either ready for the dynamics and the workings, including the fact that the Magufuli allies were and are still very powerful individuals who might not be comfortable with the fact that she is head of state. So for her, she needed to quickly metamorphose from the politician who she was to an iron lady, so to speak.
No, the path she's taking is a path that has been taken by everyone who really comes into power circumstantially. You see what happened in Kenya when Daniel Arap Moi became president, that he wanted to become soft. Later, of course, the 1982 failed coup changed his his approach towards leadership. So the same thing you see when she became president. Of course, there were that way say that look here, she's a transitional leader, and therefore she must pave way. for CCM to come up with a flag bearer now for these elections. So you find that as somebody who really wanted to bring government together so that she can really deliver on the manifesto they had presented in 2020, definitely she had to work around the clock to consolidate power. So when somebody is consolidating power, that is expected. Yes, that is expected. You'll have to purge people you're not working with and bring on board people you work with properly. And you see, parties like CCM and ANC have one thing in common, that you are there for on behalf of the party. That once the party is not comfortable with the way you are doing things, they will recall you. They recalled in South Africa, remember, they recalled Thabo Mbeki, they recalled Zuma, so they can recall anyone as and when they feel really you are not delivering.
Earlier, as MorningAtNTV was getting underway, I was listening to one of the officials of the National Resistance Movement describe the situation in Abdat, where the president was yesterday, as a place where there is no opposition, and what we see as opposition is actually an in-house problem. Allow me to talk about what could be in-house problems for Suluhu Hassan, especially as she deals with the need to further consolidate her position as president. The allies of Magufuli, who might not have been comfortable with a woman as a leader. She has on certain occasions suggested in a veiled way that Tanzania being a deeply patriarchal society, it's been difficult for her to be able to guide on certain aspects where guidance from a woman, especially in circumstances even where religion plays a part, is seen as uncomfortable. When you are faced with problems like these, as a leader, is it inevitable that you become a little high-handed?
Yeah, to some extent. To some extent in the African setting, yes. Because ideally, given her background, she's a Muslim from Zanzibar.
That's right.
And Zanzibar is actually minority in Tanzania. Because you remember, even Nyerere did say that if Zanzibar was to be annexed to Tanzania, it would be one of the smallest provinces. Yeah. So now, when she comes from such a background, then the Muslim, because Tanzania actually about more than 60% are Christians. So her main advantage is that in Tanzania, CCM is everywhere. And once somebody gets the CCM ticket, you're good to go. But now that descent within CCM, where people said, look here, they had never imagined that they can be ruled by, or they can be led by a woman. So therefore, she has now to create confidence, and actually she has to use she's using the carrot and the stick. Though some people say that she's overusing the stick over and above the carrot.
Interesting there. What's your reading of the performance of the Independent National Electoral Commission in the run-up to this particular poll? There have been incidents, for example, where you would expect an organization like that not to overly lean towards the incumbent and offer some sort of fair play to those that are seeking to contest. Is it an electoral commission that you think is doing the job?
Well, now that takes us to the crisis of electoral bodies, not only in Tanzania, but across Africa. But across Africa, because in most cases they are appointed by the regime in power, and in some cases they are cadres of the regime in power, and that becomes a major challenge. But however, I must also be quick to say that even in areas where the opposition has won, they have even won when the Electoral Commission is really is not seen to be fair.
That's right.
So it is something that it all depends on how the players are. But also when you look at the character of Tundu Lissu, he's very confrontational and aggressive. When you compare him to the likes of Dr. Slaa in Tanzania, yes.
In Tanzania?
Yes. When you compare them to the likes of Edward Lowassa, you realize the Edward Lowassa, they were gentlemen.
Was more,
yes, they are the likes of Dr. Slaa. But now you see, Tundu Lissu is confrontational. And that I think this also explains the problem he has met in Tanzania, because you remember he survived an assassination, about 16 bullets in his stomach.
Wow.
And now he's he's behind bars. But when you look at the way he's somebody really who was mobilizing the country into some kind of Protestant revolution, and definitely in Tanzania, that is something that they cannot take lightly. Yes.
Now, let me just focus a little bit on the trajectory of Samia Suluhu Hassan, especially when it comes to the administration of government and the rollout of new economic policies, especially after the COVID-19. A controversial epoch for Tanzania, given the fact that the former president didn't acknowledge the existence of COVID, and even in the days after his death, it became a very, very critical point of debate. Do you see her rollout of the Magufuli policies or the reversal of some of them as a betrayal to the manifesto?
Now, when you look at her slogan when she took over power, it was Kazi Endelee. Work should continue.
That is right.
And therefore, in her wisdom, whatever she saw that was really standing in between Kazi Endelee, actually, some of those laws really she had to put them aside. But by and large, you realize that yes, she has continued with the manifesto of 2020 because she was the running mate of Magufuli. But where she feel that really perhaps the late president had really taken an iron hand, some of those really has softened. Even when you look at the investment policy, because during Magufuli's time, the investment environment was actually harsh to the foreigners. But you see, he has relaxed some of the things. So he has reversed some of the policies, he has reversed some of the stand that was taken by Magufuli to actually create a more foreign investment conducive environment in Tanzania.
No, like a liberal economy, one that ought to be attendant to the challenges of the day, and the fact that the international community plays a major role, especially when it comes to the implementation of some of the policies there. We're expecting to speak to Honorable Jacqueline Amongin. She's one of Uganda's representatives at the East African Legislative Assembly, for her insights and perspective on this matter. So when she comes through, we shall be able to engage her on that. But for now, allow me to tell you that the smaller registered parties in Tanzania do exist, but historical data that we have here says they capture less than 5% of the total electoral dispensation and the vote. And the Electoral Commission has cleared 17 candidates to contest. Now, that is something that poses a little bit of confusion to those that are seeing things from the outside. 17 presidential candidates, and the accusation is that the opposition hasn't been allowed to participate fairly. We are now joined by Honorable Jacqueline Amongin. She is a member of the East African Legislative Assembly. Reliably told that she's part of the campaign process for the president and will need to continue with that. So let's speak to her very, very quickly. You're welcome to Morning at NTV, Honorable. Can you hear me?
Good morning again.
Good morning.
Good morning, fellow panelists and all the viewers right now. Greetings from Karamoja, that's Moroto.
Okay.
And definitely, thank you for bringing me on board in regards to the current affairs of the East African community. And aware that most of the countries within the East African communities are going through the electioneering process. I know that we did Rwanda recently. South Sudan postponed. Uganda will be doing next year. And Tanzania is actually voting. And I think the last rally was yesterday. So I would like to, to say that it's very important that we wish Tanzania well in the electioneering, because the peace in Tanzania means a lot for all of us within the East African region, but not also only East Africa, but Africa as a continent. I would like to say that being a member of the East African Legislative Assembly, and aware that our headquarters are in Arusha, that is in Tanzania, I am not one of the observers, but the team from the East African Legislative Assembly, our deputy head of mission, of course, Her Excellency Wandira Kazibwe is the head of mission for that election, and the deputy head of mission for the election of Tanzania is the Honorable Korobia, who chairs the Regional Affairs Committee in the East African Parliament. So the East African Parliament is fully represented in the observer mission. As the East African region, would like to say that I think Tanzania has always set a good precedence for the rest of Africa in terms of, if you looked at the history of Tanzania, it has always been very peaceful. And when you also look at the democratization process and the involvement of people, and also one of the longest parties that we have in Africa is one that is based in Tanzania, that is CCM. And I believe that this election is still going to be a peaceful one. I came from Arusha last week, and I saw that the activity, the whole of Tanzania is so busy traversing for votes for the various candidates across the country. And till then, when I left the processes in Tanzania, the country was very peaceful. And I would like to concur with one of the speakers who spoke earlier, Wich Paula, that Tanzania is one of the countries. You remember when we started the integration? It's Kenya, Tanzania, and Uganda. And then there's a strong bond between these countries in terms of many issues, including trade. That's one of the strongest pillars that bring all of us together. So as we are going, as Tanzania, hello?
Okay, go ahead. We can hear you.
Elections.
We can hear you. We can hear you.
As Tanzania heads into election, we'd like to wish Tanzania all the best. Or the parties that have participated, especially I see a lot of aggressiveness in terms of mobilization of votes in the CCM. And of course, Tanzania has also set a very good pace, because rarely do we have women presidents enough in the world almost. I know of Liberia, who had Salif, and I know of Joyce Band of Malawi. Now I know of Her Excellency Suluhu Mama of Tanzania. So I think that is very encouraging and very inspiring for most of the aspiring young people in the world. So really, what I would like to say is that we would like to wish the East African region well, because we know when Tanzania is peaceful, when it holds a very good election process, then the whole of East Africa is peaceful. But
all right.
Also what is very important to note is that in Tanzania, once elections are done, there's nothing like going to court, like in Uganda, people petition and all that. You sort your issues prior to going to election. Once the president is declared, it's done. The president is sworn in, which is very interesting for
Honorable. I want to ask you a question before you depart. You are a Democrat, and you do believe in the need for every actor who wants to be part of a political process to be allowed to participate. Does it bode well with you that an election in a country that has a woman as president, and you've just spoken about that positivity, is unable to allow the leading opposition parties to participate on account of what we've seen over the last few months as clear machinations designed to block their participation? Does that bode well with you?
No, definitely. Again, I would respond by saying, yes, I'm a Democrat and I believe in the democratic processes, but also there is also what they call public perception. I would not be in the right I would not be the right person to comment about non-inclusion, because as far as I know, I would be I could read on the press, but I cannot be informed by the press. I do not have evidence to say probably some of the players in the Tanzanian elections have been excluded But the fact that we have an observer mission in Tanzania, in the report that will be presented to Parliament, because we have a delegation of over 15 members of Parliament of the East African community, including members of the national parliaments participating in that election as observers. So the report will be able to tell us the exact thing, but apparently I cannot say anything either in the positive or in the negative. What I could only say is to wish Tanzania a very successful and peaceful election process.
All right, thank you very much, Honorable Jacqueline Amongin. I'm reliably informed that you have to be on the road as part of the campaign for your own candidate here that is happening in the region where you are. It's been a pleasure talking to you. Many thanks for your insight as well as perspective on the polls in Tanzania. We hope to see you again.
Thank you so much.
All right, that was Honorable Jacqueline Amongin. She is one of Uganda's representatives at the East African Legislative Assembly in Arusha. Allow me to return to the studio, and we are now joined by a former member of the East African Legislative Assembly. He's also Deputy President of the Democratic Party, Honorable Fred Mukasambide. Many thanks for making it to Morning at NTV.
Thank you, my brother. I equally greet my fellow panelists and the viewers.
You are a man that has lived in Arusha.
Yes.
You have experienced the political gambadoism in that part of Africa.
Yes, yes.
Today they are electing a president, members of parliament, as well as local government officials. But the election comes on the backdrop of widespread reports of clampdown on the opposition that led, as we now know, the exclusion of at least 2 opposition parties, including the first and the second when it comes to popularity. When you look at what's happening in Tanzania today, is it a good sign for democracy, or is it a point of reflection?
Obviously, it's not a good sign. I would shudder if anyone thought that Tanzania is going to undergo a substantially peaceful and credible election.
Okay. My apologies, Honorable. I'm going to have to return to you very shortly. The vagaries of on-location live reporting require us to go to Juma Kiria. He will be bringing us up to speed with a very important aspect on ground, and then later return and continue this conversation. I hope we retain our train of thought. Let's now go to Juma Kiria for that live on-location report. Good morning, Juma.
Thank you very much. We are coming to you live from Mengo. Today in Tanzania, they are electing the president. Amongst the people that are contesting is the incumbent Hassan Suluhu, who took over office in 2021 after the passing on of John Pombe Magufuli. And so this is her first race, but a lot of things have been happening in Tanzania. As we come to these polls today, one of the main challenges of Hassan Suluhu is Tundu Lissu, who is now incarcerated, facing charges of treason, and the second rival from ACT Wazalendo, that is Luhaga Mpina, was also thrown out of the race because he did not meet the requirements of standing for presidency, and so it leaves Suluhu standing against people who have been described as weak candidates. We are going to talk to the Shadow Minister of Foreign Affairs, that is the MP for Chadondo East, Honorable Mwada Nkunyenji. We want to understand, as Tanzanians go to the polls, what are some of the similarities that we draw from them, as we are also in the race of presidential campaigns as we speak?
Well, as we push towards democracy on the African continent, I would start by unfortunately saying that we have lost the spirit of Pan-Africanism as it was in the times of OAU those strong Pan-Africanists who struggled to liberate Africa and our continent, you would think that by now we would be pushing towards constitutionalism in all countries. But African Union is now nowhere to be seen, either in terms of what they say, what they do, or their patronage over what happens on the African continent. It is not any different when you talk about the East African community. In fact, as we speak today, there is no weaker institution than the East African community. And when it comes to our internal democracies, I've followed the Tanzanian election, and I've took time to read through various reports, including the report by Amnesty International. Now, the revelation are a bit concerning, whereas there's an election organized in Tanzania, but it appears to have similarities with the election happening in Kampala. The main opposition leader in Tanzania has been under detention. Neither has he faced or secured fair trial. I've seen that his party members have even been denied attending court sessions, according to international reports, as quoted by Amnesty International and various international media outlets. Now, this becomes concerning. Amnesty is also reporting issues of abduction within Kenya. Shutdown on media, including websites and social media, is also happening, according to international reports. Now, this is not any different from what is happening in Uganda. We are still in a blackout when it comes to Facebook. And as I speak today, I'm hearing also media institutions being locked out in covering key developments in this country, including now Parliament. Like NTV has been blocked as of yesterday, even to cover Parliament. I've also had their blockade in covering the head of state as we speak today. Now, Facebook has been locked, has been shut down. Internet, the jamming of internet has been happening in Uganda, and it's the same thing being reported in Tanzania. When it comes to allowing participation of candidates, that yes, the Electoral Commission announces an electoral process. I have heard in Tanzania that another key in Uganda you are seeing Besigye under detention. The one of Tanzania is facing treason charges. I think the charges for Besigye are even many. There are several charges on him, and he has been a key opposition leader for years now. When it comes to Uganda, you recall that towards nomination, the key opposition leader, President Kyagulanyi Ssentamu Robert, had been denied nomination. It had to be intervention of various forces and various forces and arguments here and back that finally President Kyagulanyi was nominated. But even after his nomination, you can see just yesterday his hotel room was attacked by goons commanded by some security operatives, including police, and we are yet to understand whether he's well, but at least a number of his crew, his campaign team, were left injured. Some are still in hospital as of now. These are concerning developments and trends. We are also hearing the same that in Tanzania, the other key opposition leader was denied participation in the electoral process, and it appears when I was reading reports of Amnesty International and other international media outlets, they are saying that the Tanzanian election is like a coronation of the current president of Tanzania. It's like a coronation. It's a one woman's race because all opponents have been either detained or not allowed to participate. And
Honorable, probably going forward, because you're drawing a lot of similarities between Uganda and Tanzania, going forward, how best can these practices be avoided so that we ensure democracy in the eastern region of this continent?
You know, fortunately, most countries of East Africa have good laws. The problem we have is that the regimes which are, for example, the Tanzanian regime and party has been in power for more than a decade in power. When it comes to Uganda, the ruling party as of today has been in power for more than 40 years. Now, these are issues. Some of these some of these political institutions and establishments tend not to allow democratic exercise. The laws are there, because when you look at Tanzania, it has good laws. The problem is, one, there is no patronage on the African continent. No one is there to advise or speak to these leaders. As I told you, the African Union is now dead. We can only rely on international voices like the European Union, powers of the world. that speaks out to democracy, but they have also not lived the test of time to speak and also act and also influence. You saw recently solving just a simple problem between DRC and Rwanda had to call for the intervention of the United States of America. Where was the African Union? Where is the East African Community? Now, these are concerning issues, but as well, the people, the citizens, have the ultimate right to determine the state of affairs and destiny of their own countries.
Honorable, the multi-party democracy in Tanzania started in 1992, way much older than it is in Uganda. Are there any lessons we can pick from Tanzania? Probably things that they are doing better than probably we are doing. Are there lessons that Uganda is doing better than Tanzania, so that the region can pick?
You know, when it comes to election, it is a question of, it's a test of the law. And we are now discussing Tanzania as of now. The Tanzania of yesterday was better than the Tanzania of now in democracy. When it comes to development and infrastructure, of course, Tanzania has better advantages than Uganda. Uganda is landlocked. Tanzania has access to the sea, and as well when it comes to the economy, its economy, I believe Tanzania is a wider and bigger economy than Uganda. And of course, historically, Tanzania had a change of leaders, and unlike Uganda, save for the current trend. I think the issues in Tanzania are just changing over time, but historically they are demonstrated democratic principles and governance, change of power and leaders, and has had the resemblance of calmness and peace as Tanzania. Even when it comes to the East African Community, it has remained a key player. Only that the last time I visited the East African Community, I learned that there are some key establishments which are required to be returned to the East African Community, what Tanzania hasn't returned to date. So even its commitment towards the East African Community remain wanting. I also recall, I've also understood and learned that recently Tanzania passed laws putting tariffs on commodities from the East African Community against the agreed position of the East African Community. It appears Tanzania is shifting drastically from its known historical stand of pushing towards democracy, pushing towards African unity and East African Community, and save for being the host of the headquarters of the East African Community. There are still issues that remain wanting. But when it comes to his history is good. We have had so many key developments within Tanzania. It has had a resemblance of peace over time. I believe these constitutional developments may now challenge the historical peace Tanzania has enjoyed, and that's why we are devising the powers that be in Tanzania allow democracy to prevail, allow the rule of law to prevail, allow the people of Tanzania to be free and exercise their right. It was very wrong for Tanzania not to allow opposition leaders to contest in this election, because it will build on their historical achievements as a country.
Thank you, Honorable. That is the Shadow Minister for Foreign Affairs and MP for Chadondo East, talking about the polls in Tanzania. This conversation is going to continue because the polls have just started this morning, and they will continue. We wait to see if Chama cha Mapinduzi will continue leading Tanzania under Hassan Suluhu, but they took power in 1961. We are going for a break, and when we come back to studios, we shall continue with general elections conversations.
All right, thank you very much. For those that went with us into the break, if you're just joining us, welcome on board. The Kickstarter is the discussion, and we are looking at Tanzania that is going to the polls today to elect a president, parliamentarians, as well as local government officials. But the election comes on the backdrop of widespread reports of a clampdown on the opposition, including the barring of the Chadema party, that is the leading opposition party, from participating in the polls, as well as the Alliance for Change and Transformation, ACT Wazalendo. It's well reported and documented that at least 17 presidential candidates will be on the ballot paper, but statistics show that these make up less than 5% of the political dispensation in the country. It's also widely reported by analysts and political commentators that these could be proxies of the Chama cha Mapinduzi, a party that enjoys mass support within Tanzania. With me in the studio, I have Mandi Akol Amazima. He is a Pan-Africanist, one that has extensively buried himself in understanding the workings of political parties, including CCM and the ANC in South Africa. We're also now joined by a former member of the East African Legislative Assembly, Honorable Fred Mukasa-Mbide. He's also the Deputy President of the Democratic Party here in Uganda. Let me go to Honorable Fred Mukasa-Mbide to pick your mind on the development in Tanzania today, but also your perspective on how far President Samia Suluhu Hassan has come as a president, and whether what she has become is something that we should not be very surprised at.
You know, when we're being trained on debating, we are told that you follow the process, namely crack, that you begin with the conclusion, you state the rules, then you analyze the rules, then you end with the conclusion again. So now that kind of structure is extremely very important. What I need to tell the public is we have a saying that the dog wags its tail. But there are unnatural circumstances where you find that actually the tail of a dog is bigger than the dog. So that it begins to look like the tail is wagging its dog. Now that is what is happening in Tanzania. And I want the viewers to understand it properly. The Samia Suluhu that you see here is not exactly the very Samia Suluhu that is underneath her own feelings. Now this is somebody that is being run now by the state, as it is. The secret service that has established the secret police, the Gestapo, or don't machutes of some sort, that has choreographed a process where an election has actually been postponed, but there is an activity that will take place. So there is going to be no election, but there is going to be continuity of the same government under a veneer that an election has been organized and somebody has won. This is something that started between the period of 2015, when the CCM got shocks, because it was not used to running an election where there has been competition. Now the arrival at the candidature of John Pombe Magufuli in the beginning also created very serious substantial cracks within the CCM, which cracks were now utilized heavily by the then Chadema when they got now the preceding Prime Minister Lowassa to now run on their ticket as the presidential candidate. I can tell you that is when the crack was so huge that the real shareholders within the CCM divided themselves into several parts. One other part actually substantially supporting the opposition. Now that created a seismic difference within the CCM establishment that generated serious democracy within Tanzania, to the extent then that actually to declare a Zanzibar win, there was rigging. Complete rigging, confiscation of ballot papers, even when the mechanical system of voting had itself also been, of course, tampered with. That is the situation that actually arrived, that generated, because CCM, even by its very nature, when you know it is called a revolutionary party. Now the freedom of parties in 1992 by CCM, we are not actually for the purpose of freeing political parties. It was generally for purposes that even parties were freed in Uganda, that free those opposition sentiments to continue doing their work while the country continues under the leadership of CCM. Now, Magufuli also begins now a purging process against those that ideally were against him in terms of ascending to the leadership. But of course, Tanzania has got a proper governance system that is usually bigger than the president of a country would be. And that is something that can now redesign. The Secret Service can redesign and begin to run, almost to puppeteer a president into a specific process, even when that president did not feel that is the process that should be undertaken. It is only Magufuli who tried, of course, to patch up and now establish a new wave of dictatorship that would, in effect, have to quash and quell all opposition sentiments within the country in order to re-establish CCM back to its now very nature as a dominant political party within Tanzania. So now there was a problem. The death of Magufuli obviously looked like a disturbance of some sort to what had been choreographed in terms of re-establishing full and total control by CCM of the Republic of Tanzania. Now, the death and the announcement of death had the effect of who becomes the president in Tanzania. So the
delay to announce.
Yes, because you see, when a president dies is one thing, but when he is going to be announced dead is another. Depending on what the Constitution states, that this one becomes president in the event of death of the current president.
Sitting president.
Nobody quickly announces the death of the president, unless obviously when security circles have sat, everything has been reorganized, the speaker has been alerted, chief justice has been alerted, because there must be, because at all times there should be a president. Now in Tanzania, there was a problem where delays had been intended by Secret Service of announcement until a clock would be established as if the president has reshuffled the government, for fear that the vice president being a lady would not be president of Tanzania, or should not be accepted as president of Tanzania. But that delay was quelled by a senior former leader of Tanzania who actually told the BBC about the death, because he had of course he had all the knowledge. He would consume intelligence services from the Secret Service. He knew that the president has died.
So does a Canada.
Yes, so and he had the interest in Samia Suluhu becoming the next president.
Okay.
So leaked it to BBC, and so be it. She had to take oath of office. Now, her original ideas were to take back Tanzania to democracy, but now the original ideas had to face a hard one. And that is why the way she looks like, she's in English, she's somebody we can term as a, she's dichotomous. She actually is a double entendre of some sort. She presents two persons. One is a Democrat, the other one is not. So there is a dictatorship and havoc established by somebody who actually puts on a smile at the camera. So now that is a conflict of a person that is leading Tanzania.
Interesting there. Honorable Fred Mukasa-Mbide, staying true to form. Bande, when I hear Honorable Fred Mukasa-Mbide speak the way he does, all I see are fault lines that are running deep within the CCM. And this particular election is an opportunity for Samia Suluhu Hassan to stamp her authority and begin the process of redirecting. I do not know whether the establishment that has the protectors of the republic, including the good Kano you talk about, is one that will allow for that to happen the way she might want it to happen, because she has now to stamp her, or rather put her foot down and begin to be the president and not the puppet. Is that possible with this election?
Yeah, I just want to say that yes, that is very, very possible. But maybe I wanted to correct some impression that Honorable Mukasa-Mbide created here. Okay. Is that when you look at the history of CCM, is that they will always have a stiff competition when they are changing leadership. For example, you realize after Mwinyi's presidency, when Benjamin Mkapa was coming in, CCM really got some stiff competition from NCCR mageuzi. Then the 10 years of Kikwete when Magufuli was coming in, the same thing. And why is that so? Is because prior to the general election, there's the internal party primaries. So that process of coming up with the presidential flag bearer normally leaves the party somehow disintegrated. Now, when you look at this particular case of the 2015, why there was a lot of competition is ideally the Maasai have always felt that they have the country has not been fair to them. Because at one time, they had Sokoine. Sokoine was a very powerful person during Nyerere's time, and they had thought that actually he was the natural successor of Mwalimu Julius Nyerere, but he dies a year too. He dies a year before Nyerere actually left power. Then also, when Kikwete became president, Edward Lowassa was the very powerful prime minister. And now the northerners in Tanzania, that is the Maasai, the Sukuma, all those people really expected that yes, now one of their own is really going to become the next president, only for Lowassa to be disgraced and actually dropped as prime minister. But Lowassa was this rich man who was actually very influential in CCM. So he started building capacity as the next president. Now, when it came to CCM, at that time when the nominations for those who are going to be CCM flag bearers were going to take place, actually the leading candidates were Lowassa and Bernard Mende, who was the Minister for Foreign Affairs. And indeed, the competition was so stiff that they risked disintegrating the party. And according to the CCM constitution, is that the Council of Elders can actually disqualify all the candidates in the interest of the party cohesion. So they were all just on the 11th hour disqualified, and then fresh nominations were made. So then fresh nominations brought in Dr. John Pombe Magufuli and Dr. Asha Rose Migiro. And that is how Magufuli comes in. Now, Magufuli comes in when he was actually little known because they knew him as Tinga Tinga, the Minister of Works. You get it? So that is why that very the election, CCM faced is because you are having a newcomer as opposed now to Lowassa, who was really almost everywhere in the country. And when he defected to Chadema, for the first time, really, CCM got a run for their money. But again, that election also brought in something that the people had not envisaged. You see, the constitution in Tanzania was such that once the Electoral Commission has announced the results, there's no petitioning. No petitioning. Now, here was, there were glaring instances that elections had really had some loopholes. And now here was, Lowassa saying, now look here, where do we go to? So, now, those are the reforms the Tundu Lissu was talking about. That there are reforms that had been proposed in 2015. Up to now, these reforms
they haven't been undertaken.
They haven't been undertaken, yes.
Interesting there. We now have what is arguably a very good understanding of the workings of the Chama cha Mapinduzi and the greater body politic in Tanzania. But let me bring in something that should be able to help the viewer, the Ugandan who is following events in Tanzania right now. How does it bode for the East African community going forward when, for example, we do grapple here in Uganda with cases where opposition politicians are harangued, opposition politicians are jailed, and trials take forever, and this is something that we see happening. Context might be different, especially on the dynamics of why they are in jail and why the trials have not gone as they are supposed to. What should we read into this? And for feedback purposes, how can we do our own realignment, especially for opposition political parties like the Democratic Party, Forum for Democratic Change, PFF, NUP, and JEMA, so to speak?
Yeah, something that people need to know is that a free and fair election is not the event of voting. It must be preceded by a wide range of laws that should be established in terms of reforms and all and sundry. Just like my brother was saying, of course, when the when Tanzania got for the first time, I did not actually indicate that differences do not obtain while CCM is arriving at candidates. I know that Kikwete at one point wanted to come first, but then, of course, Nyerere came in and prevailed over to the extent that somebody else came in before Kikwete. All of those, of course, generate sentimental impulses within the party. But for the first time, the sentiment bolted out and generated a candidature against the party. Now that creates factors and combinations that a political party that is known historically as entrenched and established as an autocracy now gets started. Because clearly there is, you see, when you have a candidate, for example, the stature of the Right Honorable Mama Mbabas against the incumbent, you know that there is going to be sharing of intelligence information, whether you want it or not.
No doubt.
So a candidature of that nature cannot be taken for granted. Number two, that now created new factors and combinations for Magufuli to start with. Because it had generated, of course, a failure of CCM to garner the usual voting, and it now got back to 58% and something, which was a shock in the country. And the 58 having been achieved out of what is allegedly a rigged election. You can imagine what that one now implies. Now that factor, what Magufuli had to do was now to, the mortality of access to justice became incumbent in Tanzania. Now justice became the target. Immediately, Tanzania withdrew its declaration from the African Court on Human and People's Rights. So Tanzanians now would no longer access the African Court for any violations. That is where now Metikila and what all those that used to, Reverend Metikila, that used to go to court, would always meet there fighting for this and that, while I'm suing Uganda, he's suing Tanzania, we are suing Kenya. I think now he's late. Yeah, probably he died. So justice became extinct. What now is happening in Tanzania, the situation has created social media warlords. And now the young people are now...
social media warlords.
Yes, and that is the informative approach that they have adopted to inform the whole,
the whole world about what is happening.
About what is happening. So here in Uganda, we should focus on reforms.
Focus on reforms.
Before we get to an election. If we land in an election before reforms, obviously we expect the same results. It's like trying to throw your spear in order to determine where the position of the lion, where it is. Now, the moment you get to understand where it is, when actually
the spear is
also away from you, what next? Now,
Honorable Fred Mukasambide, many thanks for the perspective, and many thanks to you too, Amanda Cole Amazima. I'm afraid we are out of time. I'm going to have to go to my correspondents on ground so they can bring us up to speed with other matters happening. But I would love the conversation to continue, especially on X and Facebook, especially for the women's movement. Right now, there are many feminists who